So this is the third segment in this series on religious faith, with the point being that there are two key aspects to it. One, an awareness of our own defilements, and two, an awareness and sensitivity to the existence of an altruism, a compassion within the universe that accepts us just as we are. Now, I've been going through this little Jodo Shinshu book, and I thought it interesting to highlight from the last section that I read in the second segment of this series, to the effect that basic to all formulations within Buddhist doctrine is, quote, the law of cause and effect, which can be said to be the distinctive feature of what the Buddha discovered. And, that to me is extremely profound. I just think of it with the short phrase, causes and conditions. Our own defilements, the unique pattern of our own qualities that hinder us from attaining enlightenment in this life, are a function of, however you want to think of it, karmic consequences, causes and conditions, a complex series of events from the past, from the beginningless past, that have led up to our present moment, our present state of existence. And given the nature of our human existence, us being the creature that we are, a Homo sapiens, not that far, frankly, from the apes, from the great apes, or from the chimpanzees, how can we possibly conceive that we would have the capability of transcending all those baser characteristics that are a function of the causes and conditions in our own heritage? No way. No way. Nevertheless, given our consciousness, our ability to be thoughtful, to have concepts, to be aware of our own mortality, of, to some extent, the nature of the environment, the universe in which we have miraculously come to life, that we can recognize through certain either exercise of precepts, meditative practices, or faith, that we are interconnected with the rest of the universe, and that in that context we are a part of the universe, and that may be part of the basis for us to feel, for me to feel, that I'm accepted just as I am, that I don't have to be perfect. And I choose to characterize that reality, those causes and conditions, within the framework of Shin Buddhism. Now, the next section of this Jodo Shinshu book focuses on the founder of Shin Buddhism, Shinran Shonin. And, I've made a couple of other videos focusing on Shinran and his biography, his life in 13th century medieval Japan. Shinran being the one who basically refined, to my mind, the Buddhist system of pure grace. And so, if you can indulge with a few more comments regarding his biography, I'll continue reading in the little Jodo Shinshu book that's described down below in the characterization of this video. Shinran Shonin. Born near the ancient capital of Kyoto on May 21st, 1173, a period of great social unrest. Lost both parents at an early age. Became a monk at the age of 8. Studied Buddha Dharma for 20 years on Mount Hai, the center of Buddhist studies at that time. At the age of 28, descended Mount Hai and became a disciple of the monk Honen. Attained the assurance of birth in the Pure Land he had sought all his life. Because of political pressure from other religious groups against his master, was exiled to the province of Echigo. From there, immigrated to the then frontier area of Kanto, general area of modern-day Tokyo, where he spread the Nembutsu teachings. Returned to Kyoto in old age. Wrote the Shoshinge, or Hymn of True Faith, and many other works expressing the absolute, quote, Buddha-centered power, teaching of the Nembutsu. The first monk to publicly take a wife, Eshini, who bore him 7 children, among them Zenran and Kakushini. Died on January 16, 1262, at the age of 89. The 89 years of Shinran's life resulted in 2 major accomplishments, which are described in the next section. The Nembutsu. Shinran Shonen's first achievement was to refine the essence of faith from the various practices which existed in his day, and to express it in the form of Tariki, or Buddha-centered power. At that period of Japanese history, art, medicine, government, science, and everything that would come under the general classification of culture was considered to be religious. As these areas of activity and study began to be investigated independently of their religious significance, however, the sphere of religion became vague. Shinran Shonen's predecessor, scholar monks, had begun the process of discarding the non-religious elements from Buddha Dharma and groped toward the idea of, quote, faith. The Shonen inherited this tradition and carried it to its highest development, that of faith based on absolute Buddha-centered power. It is impossible to go beyond this level. Anything further than the point to which Shinran carried Buddha Dharma will result in a non-faith deviation from the religious sphere. The second thing Shinran Shonen did was to simplify Buddha Dharma so that even unenlightened persons such as you and I could participate in the teachings and gain birth in the Pure Land. The teachings left by the historical Shakyamuni Buddha are remarkable for their profundity. However, because his teachings are intended for monks who have the leisure that can come only from abandoning home and family, for a homeowner with a family to support, they are extremely difficult to follow. Until Shinran Shonen, everyone who wished to attain enlightenment had to follow what is referred to as, quote, the path of sages, in which the devotee had to spend every moment of his life in religious quest. Shinran Shonen himself diligently pursued this path for 20 years. But regardless of how ideal this path may be, we must seriously consider whether it is one that we can tread. Although we may be able to physically go through all the prescribed forms of religious activity which others can observe, it is extremely difficult to develop the heart which motivates these actions. Later we will describe what one person went through in following the path of sages. Quote, but for this ignorant Shinran, unquote, this is the attitude which Shinran Shonen started. Quote, but, close quote. This skeptical and doubting attitude toward ourself is where our quest for spiritual enlightenment begins. Where this doubt is pierced is where the world of the Nembutsu begins. Or rather, when this doubt is enwrapped in the causal vow, is where the entrance to the Pure Land opens up. Doubt is basic to the teachings of Jodo Shinshu, for without it, the experience of the causal vow will not be had. Experiencing the causal vow is usually referred to as having, quote, faith in it. There is nothing wrong with the word faith, except that it connotes having to believe in something because it is impossible to know about it. But experience of the causal vow is knowledge of it. This will be discussed in more detail later. How are we to approach the gate of the teachings? In order to decisively encounter the Buddha's true intentions, his causal vow, we must have a seeking heart. Each of us must approach the gate of the teachings ourselves and enter in ourselves. But how do we approach the gate in order for it to open up for us? There are religions that require you to pray before the gate opens. There are others that require you to fast and perform ascetic rituals before you can enter in. Some religions require sitting in meditation, and yet others require you to repent before you can enter into the gate. How did Shinran Shonin approach the gate? His approach was to use his ears. He entered into the gate of the teachings through hearing. In Japanese, the character, quote, to hear, is written with the character for ear placed inside the character for gate, thus perfectly symbolizing for us Jodo Shinshuists the way to approach the gate of the teachings. Hearing is both the beginning and the end of Jodo Shinshu. A follower of Jodo Shinshu always listens diligently, whether at the temple or at home, whether the subject is religious in nature or not. For it is not what is said that is as important as what is heard. A wise man can learn even from a fool. The Japanese term used to refer to the way a Jodo Shinshuist hears a sermon is manpo, written with the characters for hearing and law or dharma. A Jodo Shinshuist who does not hear is a Jodo Shinshuist in name only. Just what is it that we listen for, and how do we hear it? What do we listen for? The world of religious awareness is not known through academic study, so there is no need to memorize all the things you hear. There are only two matters about which we should listen very carefully. These are my heart and Buddha's heart. Regardless of what passage we may select from a sutra, if we consider very carefully, these two matters will always be found to be discussed. No matter whose sermon we may listen to, if these two matters are not discussed, it is not a sermon. Or if these two matters are discussed and we do not hear it, it is the same as if we did not hear the sermon. What are we? You had probably heard of the Carlsbad Caverns in the state of New Mexico. Many of you have probably visited it. Deep in the inner recesses of those caverns is a river in which blind fish live. These fish have the remnants of eyes, but living in the pitch darkness of the caverns for thousands of years has caused their eyes to atrophy from lack of use. If you were to ask these fish, quote, "Don't you find it rather inconvenient that you are not able to see?" they undoubtedly will reply, "What? What do you mean by seeing?" Because they have not experienced what it is to see, they doubt that there is such a thing. Aren't all of us very much like the blind fish in Carlsbad Caverns? Buddha Dharma teaches that without exception, all men and women have a sort of blindness. But even if we are told this, it is very difficult for us to agree, and in this we are very much like the blind fish. We differ only in that we are not completely blind. Rather than not being able to see anything, we see things in distorted form because of the colored glasses we wear. We wear these glasses from the time we are born until the day we die. Our glasses cause us to see things in distorted form because they are dyed with the color of egotism. Since you and I cannot see except through the lens of egotism, we always look at ourselves very tolerantly, but look at others very critically. Whether walking along the sidewalk or driving down the street, we alone are the center of interest to ourselves. When walking, drivers in cars are a nuisance. When driving a car, pedestrians are just something to try and avoid hitting. Even on those occasions when we are able to observe ourselves objectively and clearly recognize that we were the ones at fault, the judge, deep inside our heart, forgives us because of extenuating circumstances. However, when it comes to the other person, we are merciless in our criticism. So far we have discussed the results of our egotistical attitude in relation to other people, But our attitudes become even more clear when we consider our relationship with animals. We speak of this insect as being harmful or that bird as being beneficial. That meat is good to eat or that egg is nutritious. These judgments, harmful, beneficial, good to eat, or nutritious, are all made in relation to how they affect us. Does an insect that is harmful to humans consider itself to be harmful? No, it is only doing what is natural to it. From the insect's point of view, the one that is harmful is man. Have any of us performed a pure and simple, quote, good deed even once? All of us have helped others, but deep down, didn't we do it after carefully calculating what others would think of our act? Or feeling self-satisfied with it, quote, it feels good to help others. It is extremely rare not to feel the smug satisfaction of superiority we get after making a big show of giving others a treat or a gift. There is an old saying, quote, at times we can truly grieve over the disaster that has befallen another, but only a heavenly being can truly rejoice over the good fortune of another. This is truly what we are like. Quote, to listen to my heart, unquote, means the following. The person who is riding the fiery chariot of egotism and crossing the icy river of selfishness is none other than myself. It is important to realize that even those who do not, quote, listen to their heart are able to live, quote, good lives. However, they live what seems to be a good life only as seen through distorted lenses. At the base of their lives is a large cavity of which they are not aware. In a poem, Shinran Shonin wrote, quote, because even the practice of good turns to evil, it is called, quote, the fool's practice. He was lamenting the calculation and self-conceit that lurks behind all of our, quote, good deeds. Those who are not aware of the delusions of their heart are like germ carriers. While performing what they think are good deeds, they do not know that they are spreading germs which are injurious both to themselves and to others. What should we do to stop this? Should we throw away our egotism and renew our heart? It would be wonderful if we could. Regardless of how deeply we reflect and strive to discard our ego in order to live altruistically, it is an impossible task. It is like asking the darkness to create the morning sun and light up the day through its own efforts. Jodo Shinshu teaches the truth. Regardless of how distasteful and painful it may be, if it is the truth about ourselves, we must listen. I'm going to stop here. And this describes and characterizes in vivid detail the first of the two attributes of faith that is the main theme of this series of videos. Again, the defilements that exist within each of us that are so extraordinarily difficult to transcend. There is, though, the other part of the equation, which is a focus on what is the heart of the Buddha, and I'll focus on that in the next fourth segment of this series. Namo Amida Buddha.